was to confront them at every turn with strength. And dealing with Gorbachev the way that he did, finding a way out for Gorbachev, was the removal of the last brick of the facade of communism.
There has been a disastrous nuclear accident at a plant just north of Kiev, Chernobyl. Mr. President, an international team of observers found the purchase of votes and the switching of ballot boxes.
Look, we have the evidence on all of this.
Then, after immediately...
The Chinese say that you're welcome to come back to Beijing, but only in a ceremonial religious post.
I'm not concerned about my own, you see, what you call status.
Updating now, the crash of that Pan American Airlines Flight 103. Radio contact was lost and the plane went down.
I was in Beijing when Gorbachev went to visit, and that was the beginning of Tiananmen Square. His arrival there was an opportunity that the Chinese students seized to grab Tiananmen Square and say, we want the same thing for our communist country.
The original planning was we're going to start a hunger strike, no food, and very little sleep. We're harming our physical health.
We were all witness to that demonstration as it went on in the square day after day after day.
I feel very tired, but I have to insist to go on.
Then, of course, there was that fateful night when the Chinese military moved in. The buses of Chinese military arrived on the fringes of Tiananmen Square, and the students were taunting the young Chinese soldiers, and I was thinking, this is not going to work, because these young men in uniform will respond to orders if they come.
A couple of students was not walking fast enough, and the tanks just ran over them. It was a surreal and horrible experience.
The government now, with what appears to be a fairly firm grip on the situation in Beijing, but at an enormous cost, not only in bodies, in lives, but also the political consequences, which we're still to measure, of course.
So much of history is in the symbols of great events. China was one young man standing in front of a column of tanks so that they would only be able to move forward by running over him. Tiananmen Square happened on a Saturday. We did a documentary that Sunday night. On Monday morning, I said, I'm going to Beijing.
Good evening from Beijing. Two portraits of China tonight. This one where millions of Chinese are going about their daily routines. The other one is more difficult to show. China as a police state.
And we were greatly restricted in where we could go and what we could do. One of our cameramen came up with this idea of putting soft drink boxes on the back of a bicycle, putting a little Sony Hi8 camera down on the side, and then wiring me up. And I rode my bicycle into Tiananmen Square, and we got the first pictures out of Tiananmen Square after the riots.
Despite those earlier reports during the trouble that there was fighting within the Chinese military, we've seen nothing here except a complete military crackdown, a unification of the forces.
Only one Chinese bicyclist realized what we were doing. He reached down, tickled the lens, and went on his way. And we were not caught. If we had been, we'd have been in trouble, obviously. When I left Beijing, I thought that once you light this flame, you can't completely extinguish it. The passion for political reform still beats in the hearts of these young people. China is a story that makes me want to live to be 200, because I want to know what's going to be going on there in 130 years.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
The Berlin Wall was such a fixed part of our lives, and it was such a physically imposing barricade. It was so much uglier and so much more oppressive than people realized from just seeing it on television.
So ein Monster von Mauer.
You cannot explain to someone such a monster of a wall. We had no possibility of getting to the other side. And the many dead at the wall show you what happened if you stood up against it.
Und irgendwann knallte es.
Suddenly there was this bang. There were several bangs again. I flinched. It was just before midnight. And damn it, I did not know they were directed at my son.
This is how political systems work in the late 20th century. We divide the natural order of the Germanic people with this wall, and anyone who attempts to breach it will be shot or jailed and executed. 1989, that was a year in which everything changed. Mikhail Gorbachev got to East Germany and was treated like their savior, someone who was going to give them new hope about their lives. We thought we might as well go over and get in on that. I'd like to tell our audience that I knew exactly what was going to happen. Simply not true. The propaganda chief from East Germany was having a news conference. He was handed a slip of paper at the very end and said that the Politburo has decided that all citizens of the GDR can leave the GDR and come back through at any of the transit points. The room was abuzz. This man gets up and leaves the room. I went rushing upstairs with the camera crew, sat him down.
Do I understand it correctly? It is possible for them to go through the wall at some point, presumably.
It is possible for them to go through the border.
Good evening, live from the Berlin Wall on the most historic night in this wall's history. For the first time since the wall was erected in 1961, people will be able to move through freely.
We were the only ones there. I had to borrow a top coat from Mike Betcher because I was wearing one of my typical Brokaw outdoors jackets. It was a fairly ratty condition. So I said, this is going to be a big night. You wear my jacket, I'll wear your top coat.
Shell!
I couldn't hear myself think. I'd written this whole broadcast. And I just threw it out and I said to New York, just stay with me here and I'll get through this the best I can.
They're coming across the wall right here. We have a remarkable development here tonight at the Brandenburg Gate. On the other side, East Germans have now come to the wall, and many of them have been seen crawling up on the wall, being helped across by West Germans from this side. The people are here to celebrate freedom.
They were in tears. I was crying, and then they poured champagne over my entire car.
That's a chunk of the Berlin Wall. Men and women atop the wall tonight, hammer and chisel, taking it down.
All night long. They chipped away at the wall. They danced atop of it. They drank a lot.
It is the beginning, it appears, of a new age, not only in Europe, but throughout the world. This is the day that the Cold War ended not with a bang, but with a street party throughout East and West Berlin.
In 1989, after the fall of communism, there was a euphoria in America. That turned out to be misleading. There was another threat that was growing out there that we weren't paying enough attention to.
It would be greater than the